So let's talk about rape gangs. So maybe one of the most horrific stories I have read about over the last 10 years is the stories of the British rape gangs. All these rape gangs in towns all over the UK. We're not talking about one gang. We're not talking about one town. We're talking about maybe a dozen towns, maybe more. We're talking about gangs that involved dozens of individuals. We're talking about this raping of tens of thousands of young girls, many of them children. We're talking about grooming, and they often call them grooming gangs. We're talking about grooming them from when they're very little, 10, 11 years old, all the way up to when they're young adults. And, gang rapes repeatedly and over many, many years. We're talking about a situation where local authorities, from the police to local politicians, knew about this and refused to do anything about it. We're talking about parents who tried to stop it and were often told by the police and others to stop it, to not intervene. And this went on, again, for years and years. It was finally brought to public attention, I think, what was it, 8 years ago maybe, and slowly some of these gangs were prosecuted, but not all of them. And according to reports, in some places, these gangs continue to do this. Now, one of the reasons that this was covered up, one of the reasons that British cops did not go to the defense of children is because the gangs were all consisted of Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Indian Muslims. Muslims from Southern Asia is the common denominator across all these gangs. Indeed, one of the communities that tried to fight them off was Sikhs from India. And the reason, the police did nothing, is because it would be deemed racist for a white police force, a white culture, to prosecute dark-skinned foreigners. And it would be Eurocentric, colonialist, neo-colonialist, imperialist, to judge another culture by Western standards. Even when we're talking about this all happening in a Western country. I can't think of anything more horrific than police just standing by as this happened. I can't imagine how betrayed these young girls and their families must feel and have felt. Even the feminists, who you'd think would be concerned about girls, young women, being systematically raped. No, they're much more concerned about racism and colonialism and all that stuff. This is a real horror that continues. So I think today, the minister in the UK government, in a Labour Party, announced that the Labour Party, that the Internal Minister would not initiate an investigation across all of these different occurrences of gang rape, all these different towns. Why the authorities did nothing about this? They would not actually go and investigate the systemic destruction of the lives of young children, English children. Most of them, by the way, were white, for whatever that's worth. Why wouldn't they initiate this investigation to uncover the truth about who covered this up? Well, the official statement was because the conclusions might be distorted by the far right and play into politically into their hands. I mean, what an admission. We're not going to investigate massive injustices happening. And by the way, they all happen under conservative governments. So the conservatives did nothing for years and years and years and years about this. And Labour now is saying, we don't want to give the far right excuses. But in other words, we don't want to give the far right an issue. But of course, the issue exists. And the reality is that, I mean, the far right is not right about a lot of things. But in making this a big issue, they are right. And the fact that the national government will not examine this, will not review it, will not have a commission to look into it, will not weed out the corruption within its own ranks, within the ranks of the national police and the local police, is a travesty, an absolute travesty. And again, this is all about appeasing Islam. This is all about not calling them what they are. This is all about not condemning a barbaric culture. They happen to be Muslims from South Asia, but these are barbaric, primitive, anti-human life, anti-human flourishing cultures. And anybody who tolerates the rape of young children, is a monster. And yet, UK politicians have tolerated this for years and years and continue to do so. And they should be called on this monstrosity. It is just horrible. And I don't understand how Britons, particularly women, but Britons more broadly, are not out in the streets demonstrating. They'll go out to the streets to demonstrate for Hamas and to globalize the intifada. But where is the outrage by the common Brits? Why aren't they surrounding the Houses of Parliament and demanding an inquiry, a national inquiry into this, demanding justice? I mean, some of the perpetrators, one of them, I read a story today, one of the gang leaders was a non-citizen. He served 6 years. He was released. He was supposed to be kicked out of the country. 3-4 years after, he's still there. He's still there. And the horror is, if you tweet something saying something about this, you could be arrested by British police for offending Pakistanis or offending Muslims. Well, let me say, if this is their behavior, they should be offended. We should be all out on the offensive, offending people who rape children. They deserve to be offended. And a culture that tolerates this, because imagine dozens of men getting together on a regular basis to groom and rape young girls. Did their wives not know? Did other men in the community not know? Did community leaders, did religious leaders, did the people not know? Well, all the evidence suggests, literally all the evidence suggests, that indeed they did know. They did know, and they stood by and they let it happen. So it's not just the men who did it who should be condemned, it's the entire culture. And if any of these people are not UK citizens, they should be expelled tomorrow, put on a plane, sent back to Pakistan tomorrow. And the rest of them, certainly the ones who perpetrated it, should be in jail for the rest of their lives. Keys should be thrown away. And the people who knew about it and who said nothing should be prosecuted as well as complicit and put into jail. And this is what we have a government for. All the rest is BS. This is what it's for. This is its purpose. The failure of the Conservative government before and the failure of this Labour government in doing this, it really is, horrific. Horrific. It is a massive deception by the government. By the way, one of the reasons Labour might not want to investigate this is it turns out that Keith Stammer was head of, I guess, whatever agency was responsible for public security during parts of this era, and might have known and might have been part of the cover-up. At least that's what some people on Twitter are speculating. Anyway, this has hit Twitter, partially because the government just announced that they're not going to investigate. Partially because Elon Musk has got on this and making a big deal out of it for all kinds of reasons. Some of them good, some of them not so good, but he's making a big deal out of it. This is not going to go away now. At least not on, I don't think it's going to go away on Twitter with Elon Musk's backing. It's going to be a big stink. Kemi Badenoch has tweeted about it. She's come after Labour. Of course, the response to Kemi, I think the justified response to Kemi has been, now you're talking? Where were you when these stories broke? Where were you when, Conservatives had the government and could have initiated an investigation like this at any point? At any point. And you could argue Labour's not doing it because many of their voters are Muslims. What is the Conservatives' excuse? What is the Conservatives' excuse? Other than pandering to leftist notions that are so inculcated now into Western values that even the Conservatives can't stand up to them. You can't accuse an entire culture of something bad. No, the culture that they bring with them cannot be allowed to survive as a culture. They either assimilate or they leave. And if they don't show sign of assimilation, they should never become citizens. So assimilate or leave. That should be the motto. And many of these communities, sadly, in Europe, whether it's in England, or whether it's in Sweden or Germany, where there's not been assimilation, then they need to leave. And this is from somebody who believes in immigration. They need to leave. And believes in assimilation, by the way, immigration and assimilation. I think most of these people can be assimilated, but never if there's no rule of law. If the law doesn't apply to them, then they're told that they are special. They're told that they can get away with stuff that nobody else is allowed to get away from stuff. Yaron's views on immigration are not very objectivist. Every objectivist views. That's true. But mine are right. All right. So, the inability of the West, cultures in the West, to assert themselves, to recognize their own superiority, their own value, not on racist grounds, but on cultural grounds, on ideological grounds, is pretty sad.